Good morning. Today, we probably have heard, if not the most famous parable in sacred scripture, very close to it. There may be a tie between this one and the Good Shepherd story. And they're both very challenging for all of us. The story of the prodigal son is really the story of the love and the mercy of the Father. And it begins really and truly disclosing to us something that perhaps many of us have gone through in life. I think that there's a little bit in all of us of both sons at different stages in life. The prodigal son, in asking the father for his inheritance, what do you think were his intentions? Come on, let's have dialogue. What do you think were his true intentions? You think he asked for his share of the inheritance so that he could start up his own business? I don't think so. I agree. I think this child of the father had always been a manipulator and a controller. And he knew exactly how to go to the father and give him what young people would say nowadays, a guilt trip, for whatever reason. But the father was not an idiot. He knew very well the likelihood of what's going to happen with that inheritance. So why did the father do it? Why did the father acquiesce into giving the son his share of the inheritance, knowing pretty much in his heart that he was going to use it for the wrong reasons? Why do you suppose? We have an expression in English that I think is very appropriate. Tough love. I think teaching a lesson back, not in the way that we think of. He taught him a lesson through tough love. The father knew that the son was nearing a point where he would have two options in life. He would either stay in the bottom of the abyss, or he took the other option, which was going up. Climb up. Climb up. So he gave him his share of the inheritance and prayed and lived hope-filled. How do we know from the story, because it's not explicit, how do we know that the father was in a continual prayer without ever losing hope that the son would come to his senses and would convert? How do we know that? Because Jesus tells us, ever so softly, that the father was always looking out to see if the son would return. And one day he caught a glimpse of a figure in the distance, and he knew, in his heart of hearts, he knew that it was the son. In coming back to the father, do you think at that point, when he was hungry, when he was living a life of misery, that he had converted? What do you think? You think that's where his conversion took place? When he was attending to the pigs? I don't think so. I think he was still manipulating, and I still think he was controlling. He wasn't talking from his heart. He was talking from his mind. He was conniving. I'm going to go back home and I'm going to tell my dad how sorry I am and everything's going to be okay. That's Canaan. This thinking here. Shama, O Israel. You shall love the Lord your God with all your mind, with all your heart, your soul and your strength, and your neighbor as yourself. He wasn't there yet. So he takes on the road to return home. And lo and behold, the loving Father sees him at the distance, and he runs to his son. And the closer he got, the adrenaline was pumping really hard, because he knew and he could see that God had heard his prayers, and he was there. And the minute he had him in front of him, he embraced him and he kissed him and he hugged him. He let him know how deep was his love for him. In all those gestures, the father was saying, I'm happy you've come back home, son. And that is the moment of the son's conversion. That is the moment when he knew the depth of his father's love for him. And he melted. Love melted away all the wrongfulness. And then he can make his confession. It is then that he makes his confession, Father, I have sinned against God, heaven, and you. And what is the father's response? He calls the attendants. Bring me the ring, bring me the rope, kill the fatted calf. He restored his human dignity. He who had been in disgrace was now again covered in grace, in the love of the Father and the mercy of the forgiving Father. Isn't that also what transpires with us? Really and truly. There's not a single sin that we have not devised that when we come with a contrite heart before our God through his ministers, he will not forgive. Because he is a loving and merciful God. Do you remember? Let's see. I don't know that many old-timers like me here. But those of us who have a few years of accumulated youth, do you remember what we call this Sunday? Laetare Sunday. You remember from the Latin what that means? Rejoiceful Sunday. Rejoiceful Sunday. Because it is this time to rejoice in the outpouring and the recognition of the love and the mercy of God for each and every single one of us. And while they were celebrating, because here is the sinner who has converted, and there is celebration in heaven as it is on earth. And while they're celebrating, here comes the oldest son. Of the two sons, who is really sick? The youngest, was he not? Sick, ill, in need of healing. The youngest, was he not? What did Jesus teach us? I did not come for the righteous. I came for those in need. I came for those in need. But notice what happened. The righteous son, the serpent, Satan, the devil, began to get through his Achilles tendon and up to his heart. And in a moment, he was filled with jealousy and envy. And he reproached the father. How can you do this to me? Have I not been a good son? Have I not been obedient? Have I not done everything you have ever asked of me? this son of yours who despises all the goodness in you, and now he comes and you kill the fatted calf when you haven't even given me a he-goat? How can you do this? What did the father do when he refused to enter the house? Again, the loving and merciful father went to the righteous son that was now indignant and full of disdain. I'm not going to say hate, but disdain. And deeply hurt. And the father pleads with him. He begs him. He begs him. And he shares his love. You know, maybe the father was not someone who talked about his love for his children, but he tried his darnest by way of example to express his love. We are born into different families, my brothers and sisters. We may have one or both of our parents who can be quote-unquote stoic. And then we can have our bosses who are always on top of us. But you know, we need to recognize that they love us. Even if it is in an inexpressive manner. Listen, parents have options to them all the time. And they were not always in keeping with our Catholic teaching, as they are now. Not in keeping with our Catholic teaching. But then as it is now, it never stopped some people from not having children if they didn't want them. So if a parent has a child, trust you me, he loves that child. And maybe he will go through life not expressing the depth of his love. But it's there. I don't know if this figure father that Jesus is using, which is his own, I think God expresses his love for us continually. But I think that it's been expressed in sacred scripture so that we come to the realization that no matter if our human father is or is not expressive, the love is there. Maybe it is not the way we perceive it, but it is expressed. Because having been made in the image and likeness of God, the love is expressed. Because God expresses his love for us every millimeter of a second of our life. And so that love and that mercy of the Father allows the Son to also come to his senses and enter into the rejoicing. Today's gospel teaching applies to each and every single one of us. There probably was a time in our life when we resented a parent or both, and we did things thinking that we were hurting them when in fact they were hurting us. But love triumphs. Love triumphs. You know, when I was at a very small age, I'm a Guajiro. I was born in a farming town in Cuba. Consolation of the fowls at the Pine of the River. Translated. And I was sent to a Catholic boarding school. And for years and years I resented my parents enormously. I couldn't understand. Why was I separated? When you're little, you don't understand those things in life. The only thing you understand is, Mom and Dad don't love me. They sent me away. They got rid of me. What did I do that was so bad? They had the best of intentions in life. Like any parent, they aspire to give me more than they had. They could afford to send me to boarding school, where I will be educated in a different way, where I will be with other boys in a different social strata than my parents were born into. Theirs is the story of La Cenicienta. My mother came from poor dirt family. She was an orphan at age 11, but she was a gorgeous, still is. And my father came from money. And they fell in love. My mother was known in our hometown as a young lady with a green dress, because it was the only Sunday dress she had. But God made a different life for her with my father. And she aspired to give us, her children, my sister and I, a more lively life. But when you're little, you don't understand those things. And then when I was 10 and my sister 9, they began to indoctrinate me. Because my sister and I were coming to the U.S. with Pedro Pan visas. That I had to be her caregiver. Me, the wild one, the resentful one. You have no idea the kind of things I did to those poor priests. Father Jose, he had prize canaries. And because I was so well behaved, every afternoon after a class between 3 and 3:30, guess who cleaned the cages? Moi. But you know what I did for that very Franciscan reasons? One day I decided I had had enough cleaning and I was going to liberate them all. And I did. I opened all the cages up and sneaked out of the room, because to me, because he was my judge and punished me, okay? I wanted to see his expression when he opened the door and they flew out into liberty. And when I heard his screams of me, what he was going to do to me, I hid until 9 o'clock in the evening. And there were weekends when they would go on outings and I would send a home note to my mother, I'm not coming. And then she would come on Tuesdays to see me and I would not go down. Because I wanted to punish her and my father. That's the truth. I can't say gracias Fidel, but gracias Fidel, because we gave us a family and we lived as a family. For the wrong reasons, we had to come, for the right reasons. Because of the wrong person that forced us into it. But you know what? We finally got to be a family. But the resentment in me was there. And it wasn't until I was about 26 that I came to understand the sacrifices they had made for me, for my sister. And then I give thanks to the Lord that for the next 18 years, I was able to enjoy my father in this life. Very fortunate. You know, there is a bit of both children in all of us. And what we need to do, if we have not done it already, is use this Lenten time. Use it to go into our hearts And to really and truly do an examination of conscience. And with reflection and the grace of God, change, convert, and try to be better today than we were yesterday. And hopefully, even better tomorrow than we have been today. God bless you.